Hi there, this is Michael Wojcik with a City Council update for May 6th, 2013. Going to be a little bit of a long one. I've got 3 items to go through, but a lot I probably got to get out there. First and foremost, tomorrow is election day. Obviously I'm on the ballot, but I'm encouraging folks to go vote for Randy Staver. This is a decision we made a long time ago, and one of the reasons is we needed to be freed up with our limited resources to focus on more important things like DMC. There are some differences between me and Randy, but the differences are not so great that we should have taken our eyes off the ball and missed on some of these issues. Because of the focus of the city on DMC, I think we're going to get a lot better bill out of it in the process. Really 3 things I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a DMC update. I'm going to talk about our decision to allow a variance that's going to allow a water tower or a water tank to go forward in the St. Mary's Park area, which I know disappointed a lot of my a lot of my friends and followers, but I want to at least give you the rationale for that. And then finally, something that really irritated me today, but we did get it done, was the core neighborhood zoning that's been 8 years in the making, but some language in particular that really disappointed me in some materials that were left off my desk, and you hope the city grows past some of this stuff. So first and foremost, DMC. If you haven't heard, the Rochester City Council has unanimously opted to support and strongly recommend passage of the House version of the DMC bill. This addresses many of the concerns people had with the original DMC language, myself included. Ultimately, the reason why this is important is it gives the greatest power to local governments, and it also gives local governments the authority to see how your several $100 million of tax dollars are being spent on infrastructure in Rochester. It's not popular for everyone, but the City Council was unanimous on this. We're communicating this with all of our legislators. There is no gray area, and there are some folks in the community who have tried to strong-arm certain ones of us to go a different route. It's not going to happen. The City Council is supporting the House version, and that's what we hope comes out of the DMC bill. I'm going to go through some of the specifics of how it affects us, but there is a post on my website, votewojcik.org, that will go through some of the updates on DMC. Second item, the St. Mary's water tower, and I went out today, took a picture of a big old buffalo saying no tank out in the neighborhood. Spent some time walking around the existing tank that's out there, and also taking some pictures of Rochester from some different places. And ultimately what was before us tonight was a legal question of whether or not the threshold for a variance was met. Staff felt the variance had been met. The Planning Board of Appeals felt that it had been met, and I concurred with their assessment and the assessment of RPU's attorney today that in fact that it had been met. Previously I had supported the site, obviously, in my role on the RPU board. I want to talk a little bit about how I came to that decision, because I know a lot of people that I care a lot about and have been friends for a long time are disappointed in this decision, but I think it's the right decision for the long run in the community. And so I'm just going to echo some of the statements that I made there, but I'm also going to put up the video clip when I get it from the City Council meeting as well. One of the first things I said is, I know there are a lot of people in that neighborhood that feels like core neighborhoods are under attack, and I tell you sometimes I feel the same way about that. In fact, I saw a little bit of that in the last public hearing of the night, and but I don't think that this is one of those cases, and I think the reason why the decision was made to put this reservoir in place was well rationed and a very reasonable decision to make, albeit not one that's going to be popular with the neighborhood. I've heard the proposed tank described as a monstrosity. There were some pictures, and I'll try and throw up one of those pictures too, that show what the overhead view looks like today versus before. It's going to be the same height as the existing one. I mean, it's different, it's going to be a change, and there's going to be some impact. I think the neighborhood's going to come out stronger in the long run as a result of this, and the community will certainly come out better in the long run. One of the things I was particularly proud of doing in my role of RPU is we made absolutely sure we were not going to put that water tank into a park. And that's a key thing that we were able to accomplish. This is going on land leased from Mayo for a very long period of time. It's going to be entirely on that land. We're not going to take 1 inch of parkland. In fact, I'm going so far as I'm going to propose to eliminate any concerns in the future of vacating some existing right-of-ways that we have on the former 3rd Street Southwest and 10th Avenue Southwest, and actually adding that to the permanent park base of St. Mary's, and actually growing that park by a fairly substantial size. It was interesting that when they put up the slide showing the vacated 3rd Street, and then they had in parentheses that's undrivable, to which my first thought was, well, you just haven't tried hard enough at that point. But where the existing tank is going to go, there's still going to be some right-of-way that allows for some buffering. It's going to be different. It's a big tank. I did check, in terms of entrance to Rochester. I went out and photographed from 52 and 2nd Street. There's no possible way you can see the current or future tower from that location. Where I was able to see it was more an area out by Civic Center Drive, and even then it was very hard to see from that area, and what I did see was actually glare from the materials on the top, which are actually going to be improved, and the new tank is going to be less visible than the current tank for most places. Obviously, until the trees come in, and perhaps even after, it's going to be more visible in that area around 10th and 10th Avenue and 4th Street, but that is what it is, and that is clearly the downside of this decision. It'd be very easy for me. It was pretty clear from the writing on the wall by the time we got to the point where I was going to make the statement. I could have voted against this and let the other 5 council members vote for it, but I think that would have been a little bit disingenuous, and it would have been focusing more on the policy side. Here's some other thoughts that I brought up. I don't know the reasons why Mayo won't let this tank be forced more into the Mayo property, but ultimately that is Mayo's decision. And yeah, it's true, we could take that land for eminent domain, but you're probably talking about $1 million legal battle to do something like that. When there's not an engineering need for that. So I wish that they had played ball a little bit more on this one. But you know what? They have their own facility concerns too, and they own the land. I get that. We're keeping the tank. We're not taking any land from anyone. We're putting this tank on the exact same piece of land we've had for water since the 20s or 30s. I do expect Mayo to do more meetings with neighborhoods in the future, and that's part of the reason why the City Council so strongly supports the House version of the DMC bill, and I think that's what ultimately is going to come out. It means local oversight for DMC dollars, and it means that as these important decisions in DMC are made, the community will have an opportunity to provide input, not watch from a spectator's seat. The main idea proposed by the neighborhood, or the suggestion, is that it should go back down in the 4th Street area where it currently is downtown at 4th Street Southeast, and I strongly disagree with that for a number of reasons. One of the reasons neighbors didn't want it here was because they said it was adjacent to parkland, and I brought up the fact that along that river we have parkland as well, and it's just as adjacent there. But longer run, I don't know what the future is for that site with the farmers market lot and the Olmsted County garage and the existing water facility, but we should do something spectacular as a community there. Maybe it's more green space, maybe it's a performing arts center. I mean, my dream is, because it's got river on multiple sides down there, is having a great performing arts center, and maybe that's 40 years away, but this precludes it. If we were to put that down there, we'd actually have to build a hydro pillar, and I can't think of any community that's built a hydro pillar in their downtown in recent years. It would be a colossal waste of land down there, and that's what one of the reasons why it's not there. Pushing it off into other neighborhoods or other parks, ultimately it just added expense to the overall process. So a couple of other things that I care a lot about is energy and conservation of water. We're not building this tank today for added capacity. This is to address our current needs, pretty much. There's not a whole lot of extra capacity. I believe that we're going to do some great things in terms of conserving water into the future, and maybe that's going to prevent our need for the next tank. But in order to do something different with this tank, we could spend any amount of money we want on this, and we could come up with solutions that work a bunch of different ways. But if we're going to spend an extra $3 million to accomplish what we can accomplish in this particular location, is that the best use of those $3 million? And I keep coming back, it's not the best use of those dollars. Mentioned a little bit about buffering. I do expect that there's going to be a substantial buffer, but also the materials that the tank are constructed from. I'm not going to lie and tell everyone it's going to be an attractive looking tank. There is no such thing. But the combination of a brick stucco finish with some strong buffering, it's going to look better than the existing tank is. I truly believe. Granted, it is larger. I knew in doing this, first of all, I could have taken the cowardly approach and not said any of this and just said I'm with the neighborhood and voted against it, and it wouldn't have changed. I mean, this was gonna, it was pretty clear to me at the time I made my comments this was gonna pass either way. But I wanted to be honest with the neighborhood where I was coming from, at least give you my rationale and my true belief that the neighborhood is going to be just fine. After this is done, it's going to be ugly for a couple years. There's going to be some transitions made, but I understand your frustration, and I hope you at least understand the where I'm coming from on this particular issue. But to be clear, I've certainly had a strong relationship with the historic Southwest neighborhood for a long time, and I hope to continue that, working on your behalf in the future. Last thing, and this one I didn't think was going to be as contentious as it was, but I was a little bit irritated, and what I wanted to point out is I had this flyer, and I got this as an email too, but I spent a little bit more time reading it because it was sitting at my desk when I came in. People sometimes leave stuff for us to read, and this is from the Eastside Pioneer Neighborhood Association. It's on development and population density, and this is what it actually says in their newsletter. And this is quoting another book in part, but it goes on to say the studies have shown that as population becomes denser, people become more aggressive. Why would that happen? Again, according to the book, it says in densely populated areas, people become more territorial and argue more frequently about turf. Well, you can't get much more scientific than that. I mean, that's why the per capita crime rate is so much higher in Singapore than it is in the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Either that or it's completely backwards. When I see this kind of stuff, it's just like, what year are we living in? I mean, it's frustrating. And what came in frustrating too is what we've seen from the Eastside Pioneer Neighborhood Associations. A couple times they've attempted to sabotage this downtown core zoning thing, and the kicker is it wasn't even being applied to them. This was something that neighborhoods were creating for their benefit. It was a zoning that gives a little bit more architectural guidance and protection for neighborhoods in the core of the city. Things that the way that these neighborhoods were designed back then are a lot different than the way that they're designed today. And but there were never any covenants or any standards to protect these neighborhoods, and that's some of the cause of the deterioration. And a group of Imagine Kutsky, I think they've worked on this for 8 years, Imagine Kutsky, and I think some other folks involved too, to try and come up with something, and there's been a lot of compromises made, something they could apply to their neighborhood that was more appropriate to their neighborhood than a simple R1. And this is what they came up with. Is it's great, it's phenomenal. I love the language in there. There's a lot of things. I wish it was a lot stronger. But when this first went to planning and zoning, out of nowhere, at the last second, they get this letter from the Eastside Pioneers saying, we haven't had a chance to review this, delay. So it was delayed. And the kicker is, we were just creating the zoning ordinance. We weren't applying it anywhere. We were just creating it. And yet, time and time again, we see them coming in, and then again tonight, they wanted to change some language in there to require more parking in core neighborhoods. And I asked the city council, okay, whose goal is it here to have more cars coming downtown? And not surprisingly, not a single person spoke up in favor of that. And I don't really know this guy who was speaking there, but he was ticking me off a little bit with his aggressive posturing. And ultimately, then after the public hearing was closed, he was yelling out some stuff again. So I told him, public hearing's closed, take it out in the hallway. I don't have the time of day for that kind of nonsense. It's too many people have worked too hard to fight for their core neighborhoods, and I'm going to be there supporting them. Ultimately, it was an 8-year process. It did pass tonight. I was disappointed it only passed 4-2, but it did pass. It's another tool in the tool belt for core neighborhoods. This is important to them. It's important to me, and I'm looking forward to getting this applied in some places where it can truly offer some better protection and allow people to make better investments in their property in core neighborhoods. So, but clearly with the East Side people speaking and reading some of that language, which is, I think it's what people sometimes refer as speaking in code. Really disappointed when I read that kind of stuff. I think we're better than that as a community, but there are going to be some people with those views out there. Ultimately, I think we did a good thing for the neighborhood on creating the core zoning district. I think it's going to apply greatly to a lot of places, and I'm looking forward to that process and working with neighborhoods and helping them understand it. So I know this was a little bit longer one, but I've been a little bit negligent the last couple of months. So thank you for your time and attention. As always, you can contact me through my website if you got any questions. Thank you so much for watching.